Two men went up into the temple to pray. One of the Pharisees and the other tax collector.
Tax collector. Okay, good. What's the first question?
Who were the Pharisees?
Who were these Pharisees, right? So they were like like in Christianity, we have different kinds of churches and different religious movements and a lot of different things going on. Well, same thing in Judaism. They had a lot of different movements, even today, And one of these movements were the Pharisees. And they just had a certain attitude towards how you should live if you're Jewish, right? And they were very strict on certain things about the law of Moses in ways that the rest of the society were not. Jesus talks about they tithe the herbs they use to season their food. They give 10% to God. Can you imagine you're preparing and you're going to take out 10%, put it over here because you're going to take it to the temple, right? It seems kind of extreme to us, but that's just the way that they thought this was the right way to do. They're very careful, very precise about everything in their religious life. Okay, so they're a religious movement. They calculate maybe around 5,000 people. Populations are much bigger. Okay, so what about the second question?
Who were the tax collectors?
Yeah, who are the tax? Well, we all know what tax collectors are today, right? They're people who collect taxes for the government or make sure you pay your taxes. Back in those days, the taxes were paid to the Romans. If you lived in Jerusalem, if you lived in Galilee, your taxes were paid to the Herods. So it depended on which area you lived in. But anyway, these were people collecting taxes. So let's say you live in Jerusalem. The taxes are going to the Romans. So they're Jewish people who are working for the Romans to collect taxes for the Romans. And a lot of people didn't like this idea because it's like you're a traitor. The Romans are our enemies. They came here, they conquered us, they make us pay these very high taxes, and you're Jewish, but you're collecting that money for the Romans? You're not a good person. So a lot of Jews did not feel good about tax collectors, Jewish tax collectors. Most of them were Jewish. So they had a very bad reputation in the society. And so that's what we're talking about here. Here's a Pharisee. He looks so religious. He does everything according to the law of Moses. He's usually he can be a very nice person. He'll give money to the poor. So he does everything right. And here's a guy who's serving the enemy and does everything wrong, right? So two very distinct personalities here that we're talking about as far as how people would see them at the time. Okay. All right, let's do the last question and then we'll get the translation. Okay, what's the last question?
Where did people pray in the temple?
Right, okay, so here's the temple, this whole big area here, this big rectangular area. And then there's a smaller area in here, and there's a court in here, which is the court of the women. And this is where most people would go into here to pray usually. And then here, this is where the Holy of Holies was, and the Ark of the Covenant, and all those kind of things, the priests. So we're in the center of the temple. Okay.
Now,